Okay, so 3.6, the last lesson that we're going to be covering that will be part of your midterm is 3.6. It is polynomials and rational inequalities. It is a lot of work, but it's just time consuming, not that it's difficult. So we need to keep in mind a couple of things. When you see these symbols, because it is equal to, you would use these symbols for your domain with the brackets. But if you just get the greater than and less than, it would be the parentheses that you're going to use. So your assignment is 10 questions, but basically I have to do an example for each problem because every question is so different. So example number 1, we're going to solve the polynomial inequality. And graph the solution. So the first problem that we have, you're going to get a problem that's already set up, ready to go. It's going to look something like this. So right away, when you look at that inequality symbol, are we going to be using brackets or, I meant to highlight it. Are we going to be using brackets or the parentheses? Brackets, right? Because it's less than or equal to. Now, just the same way, when you solve, it has to be factored. Is this problem already factored out? Yes. So I'm going to put x plus 3 equals to 0 and an x minus 2 equals to 0. When I solve this problem, the first one becomes x is what? A negative 3. And this becomes x equals a positive 2. So I'm going to think of a number line and put it over here. If I could draw a straight line, right? And who comes first in the number line, the negative 3 or the 2? Negative 3. And then I have a 2 somewhere over here. You don't have to put all the little numbers in between. So there is 3 possible answers here. It could be everything from a negative infinity to a negative 3 with a bracket because it has the equal sign. It could be from a negative 3 to a 2, or it could be from a 2 to a positive infinity. Now, how do you know what part is part of your solution? Well, you have to pick a number. So when I pick a number, you have to pick a number that's between negative infinity and negative 3. Recommendation is always to pick the smallest number possible. So which is the next smallest number from a negative 3? So I am going to pick a negative 4 for this one. I need to pick a number between negative 3 and 2. Anytime that it's something like this, the best number for you to pick would be a 0. Now you could have picked 1, you could have picked negative 2, you could have picked negative 1, it still would have worked out the same way. But you always try to look for a number that's going to make your life easier. A number between 2 and positive infinity would be what? 3. Now, these are the 3 numbers that I need to check. Now, what do I mean by check? I need to plug them into the equation and see which of them is true. So this is where I mean it's simple, but it's time consuming. So I have to come over here and I need to plug in a negative 4 for the x. So I am going back to this problem. So I plugged in this number first for the x, and then times negative 4 minus 2, and make sure that is less than or equal to 0. So when I do this, so does everybody understand what happened? Are we okay? What is negative 4 plus 3? -1. What is -4 minus 2? -6. When I multiply those, what do I get? A +6. Is a +6 less than or equal to 0?
No.
The answer is no. So this here is not my answer. So it's wrong. So then I try the other one. The next one to try would be 0. 0 plus 3. 0 minus 2. Is this less than or equal to 0? Well, what's 0 plus 3? 3. What is 0 minus 2? And that right there becomes a, is -6 less than or equal to 0? Yes. So guess what? This here is part of my answer. And then you check the last one. 3 plus 3 and 3 minus 2 less than or equal to 0. This here becomes a 6. This here is a 1. So once again, is 6 less than or equal to 0? The answer is no. So this is not part of my answer. So the only point that worked was who?
0.
0. And 0 is part of which of these? -3 to 2. So what is my answer going to be? My answer is -3, 2. Now remember, this said you had to graph it on a number line. You don't have to do the number line. It's already given to you. So my problem is from a -3 to 2, there has to be a bracket and there's a little line going like this. That's what your answer choice is going to look like. So this here is my final answer. So once again, the only number that worked was 0. 0 is between -3 and 2. So this is why it's there. Are we good? So easy, but it's very time consuming. Are we okay? Now, problem number 1 is like this, exactly like that. So problem number 1, it's already factored out, it's ready to go. So let's look at B. So B, you're going to get a problem that looks something like this. X plus 3 squared, x plus 6 is less than 0. Yes.
Thank you.
So the next problem is x plus 3 squared. X plus 6 is less than 0. Now, what does that square tell you? It's there how many times?
2.
So x plus 3, x plus 3, x plus 6 is less than 0. Am I going to use brackets or parentheses? Parentheses, because of your sign. So it's just something to keep in mind, because if you look at your answer choices, if there's a bracket, boom, it's wrong already. So consider that, look into that once you're doing your work. Now, is everything factored out?
Yes.
Yes. So now what do I have to do? Set each one equal to 0. So x plus 3 equals to 0. X plus 3 equals to 0. X plus 6 equals to 0. So what do I get here? -3. Here I get a -3, and here I get a -6. So having the -3 there twice, really, you just need to consider it how many times? Just once. So when I look at a number line, what is the first number that, who's smaller, the -3 or the -6?
-6.
Very good. So it is the -6, and this is a -3. So if my answer were to be here, it would come from a -infinity to a -6 with a parentheses. If the answer is here, it would be from a -6 to a -3 with parentheses. If my answer were here, it would be from a -3 to infinity with parentheses. So you have to pick a number. Pick a number between -6 and a negative infinity.
Negative 7.
-7 would be the best number for us to pick. A number between -6 and a -3.
-1.
-1 is over here.
Oh,
A -4 works. And a number between -3 and infinity would be
0.
0. If 0's in there, use 0. It's a lot easier. So does everybody understand how we pick the numbers?
Yeah.
Yes? All right. So then now you have to check one by one. So if I go here and I try -7 plus 3, -7 plus 3, -7 plus 6 should be less than 0. Well, what is -7 plus 3? -4 times a -4 times -7 plus 6? -1. Is this less than or equal to 0? Well, what is -4 times a -4? Positive 16 times a -1? -16 is less than 0. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes. So this one is one of my answers. Yay. And then I go ahead and I try the -4. -4 plus 3. -4 plus 3. And a -4 plus 6 is less than 0. So -4 plus 3 becomes -1, -1, and -4 plus 6, a positive 2. So -1 times a -1
1.
times 2,
2.
2. Is 2 less than 0?
No.
Nope. So this one is not an answer. X for wrong. And then we try a 0. 0 plus 3, 0 plus 3, 0 plus 6. Is that going to be less than 0?
No.
This is 3, this is 3, this is 6. Well, this is already a 9. 9 times 6 is 54. Is 54 less? And no. And some of them you could tell right away. So which one was the only one that worked here?
16.
When we tried the -7, which is
Negative infinity through 6.
through 6, right? So that is my only answer. So when it comes for you to write out your answer, it would be -infinity to a -6. And if we had to graph it, -6, there is parentheses, and it's everything to the -infinity. So it would look something like that. Of course, the number line is going to have all the little numbers. So I'll have -7, -8, and I'll have all the numbers going the other way, but this is the main thing. This is going to be number 2 on your assignment. So moving on to the next one, which is C, we have x squared minus 5x plus 4 is greater than 0. So when I look at this problem, is it factored out?
No.
No. So this is where you, having learned how to factor, is going to help you. So what two numbers multiplies to 4 that adds up? So I'm thinking of 4, and it should add up to who?
5.
A -5, right?
So -1 and -4.
So I have those two, they both have to be negative. So it has to be these two, right? So it would be x minus 1, and then x minus 4 is greater than 0. Am I going to be using parentheses or brackets? Parentheses. So that helps you right away to eliminate maybe some answers. Now that it's factored, what do you do to each? Set each one equal to 0. Set each one equal to 0. So x is 1, and an x is a 4. We do the little number line. Who's smaller? 1. And then we put the 4 here. So when it comes to writing the things on top, this could go from where to where?
-infinity to 1.
-infinity to 1. This one goes from
1 to 4.
1 to 4, and then this one goes from
4 to positive.
positive infinity. So we have to pick numbers. What number would you pick from negative infinity to 1?
0.
0, perfect. From 1 to 4, 2, and from 4 to infinity,
5.
5. And then you check each one. So go ahead and start trying to check it. I'm going to do the work here quietly while you're doing it, but just, I think most of the time it's always easier to check off of the factored ones because it's easier to multiply numbers because then you have to square and multiply times a number bigger. Like it just gets a little crazy.
We put the number inside where the X is on the original one.
I said to use the one that's the factor.
Okay.
It just makes it easier to multiply numbers sometimes. So do it on your own, then look up and check. Do not be afraid to make a mistake. You're never going to learn until you fall on your face. Just don't make sure you don't end up all bloody.
This is an over.
So, and sorry, yes, this is a 4. Whoa. So how many sections worked out here? 2 sections. This first section and this last section. So when you write your answer, please just remember you would have to put negative infinity to 1, union 4 to infinity. And when you graph it, it'll be parentheses going this way. And then that 4 will be parentheses going that way because it's everything greater than 4 and everything less than 1. So there would be 2 sections. So because there's 2 sections there is 2 sections in the graph also. So this is for question number 3. Maybe? Huh. Similar to 3. I'm not saying because there's 2 answers here, there's going to be 2 answers number 3, but you get the part where you have to factor out. Are we good? Let's just say this is for 3 and 5 actually, and let me just tell you what's going to happen in problem number 5, just so you know. For problem number 5, the only thing you have to be worried about in that problem is if it's not set equal to 0, you have to set it equal to 0. So we won't have to do another one. So if you end up with a problem like this. So for problem number 5, it's the same process, except you get something like this. What do you have to do?
Subtract 6.
Subtract 6 from both sides, and then you have x squared plus x minus 6 is greater than 0. And then you do the same thing we did right there, okay? So that's going to cut one problem from our notes. So that is problem 3 and 5. Are we good? Yeah? Okay, so we're down to example D. For example D, you're going to get something like this. X squared plus 9x is less than or equal to 0, parentheses or brackets? Brackets. So keep that in mind when you're doing your work. Can I factor something out here?
No.
Yes, an x. So this becomes x parentheses, x plus 9 is less than or equal to 0. So I have x equals to 0 and an x plus 9 equals to 0. So the first one's already done. What happens here? This becomes x equals
Negative.
-9. So when I do my number line, who do I put first?
0. Oh, -9.
-9, and then we put the 0. Who are my possible answers on top?
Negative infinity.
-9 with a
Right.
bracket. From a -9 to 0, both of them with brackets. And from a bracket 0 to a positive infinity. So always remember your infinities involve the parentheses. So which number would you pick between negative infinity and -9? -10. Between -9 and 0? -1 is your smallest. And between 0 and infinity? A 1. And then you check each one. -10, parentheses, -10 plus 9. Is that less than or equal to 0? -1, parentheses, -1 plus 9. Is that less than or equal to 0? 1, parentheses, 1 plus 9. Is that less than or equal to 0? So -10 plus 9 is -1. -1 times a -10?
Positive.
Positive 10. Now, for these math things, like once you set up your equations, if you want to just plug it into your calculator, you may. But just remember on your, or to check, but just remember on your test, you're going to have to show everything. So is this a yes or a no?
No.
No. So this becomes -9. -1 plus 9 is a positive 8. This becomes a -8. Is that a yes or a no? It is a yes. And then this is this, and this is a no. So the only part that works would be the middle part. So once again, my answer is just -9 to infinity with brackets. So when there is your number line, it has to have brackets, and it's gonna be darker in the middle. Like you'll be able to see that there's an actual line. And just look, this is what your questions look like. Well, I can't move it, but you see, you could tell if it's a parentheses or a bracket. Those right there are parentheses. These are your brackets down here. These are your parentheses. Alrighty. Okay, so moving on to example E. Yeah.
Was that number one?
Sorry. Yeah, this is for number 4. Question number 4 on your assignment. When we get to question number 6 and example E, we get something like this. Now, this looks like what type of problem? A problem where we're going to have to do what? Factor by?
Synthetic division.
Not synthetic division, because it's not a division, but it's factoring by grouping. Very good. So we need to factor by grouping. So in factoring by grouping, remember you group the first 2, you group the second 2. What do the first 2 have in common?
X squared.
X squared. So we factor out the x squared. What was left over? X plus 2. Now, what can I factor out from a negative x and a negative 2?
-1.
A negative 1. And if you factor out a negative 1 from negative x, it's just x. And if you factor out a negative 1 from a negative 2, it's just a plus 2. So remember, when we do this, our goal is for these two to always be the same. And yes, that is the case. So this is an x squared minus 1. And an x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 0. But can you factor anything else anymore?
X squared minus
This here becomes what?
X plus one, X minus
Because it is a difference of squares. So maybe that's going to be the same situation for you. And I think it will. So I have x plus 1 equals to 0, x minus 1 equals to 0, x plus 2 equals to 0. So this becomes x equals negative 1, x equals a positive 1, and x equals a negative 2. So when I put these on a number line, and this number line is going to get a little bit bigger and crazier, but it's okay. Who's going to be the first number?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. Who's going to be my next number?
1.
1, and then 2. So if the answer is here, it's from a negative infinity, bracket, or parentheses.
This wouldn't it be negative 2 first?
Oh, yes, so sorry.
And negative 1 then what?
Okay, so just remind me on E, I have to crop all that crap out. Because right now you're hearing me, right, Miss Manya? Sorry, I'm just going, woohoo. All right, so we have to do a number line. Your smallest number is a negative 2. Then we have a negative 1, and then we have a positive 1. So from here would be negative infinity to a negative 2 with a bracket. From a negative 2 to a negative 1 with a bracket. From a negative 1 to a positive 1 with brackets, and with a 1 with to positive infinity. So this is the first problem where you have how many possibilities? 4. So instead of choosing just 3 numbers the way we have been, here we do have to choose 4. So here, what number would you pick between negative infinity and negative 2? Negative 3. Now this one's going to be ugly. Between negative 2 and a negative 1?
Negative 1.5.
1.5. Yep. And between a negative 1 and 1? 0. And between 1 and infinity? 2. So for this one, it just got a little bit more work. Not that it's impossible.
So which one do we start at?
I always start from the left to right. So of which equation? I would use this one because it's a lot easier to do that than all the crazy top. So negative 3 plus 1, negative 3 plus 1, negative 3 plus 2 must be greater than or equal to 0.
Wait, and there needs to be a
Minus
minus 1.
Yes. Man, you guys are vicious. No, you guys are good. Man, Miss Peña, slap you in the face. All right, so let me do this one more time. All right. Huh? What? Negative 3 plus 1, negative 3 minus 1, and a negative 3 plus 2 should be greater than or equal to 0. So negative 3 plus 1 is what? Negative 2, and negative 3 minus 1? Negative 4, and a negative 3 plus 2? Negative 1. So when I multiply those easy numbers, that becomes a positive 8, and then this becomes what? Positive 8 times a negative 1 becomes negative 8. Is negative 8 greater than or equal to 0?
No.
No. So this one's already out. And let me try the negative 1.5, which I'm not going to be happy with, but it's okay. Negative 1.5 plus 1, a negative 1.5 minus 1, and a negative 1.5 plus 2. So this is actually not that bad because of the following. What is negative 1.5 plus 1? A negative 0.5, right? And a negative 0.15 minus 1 becomes a 2.5. And then this here becomes a positive 0.5. Now think of it like this. Any number who's greater than 0 has to be positive or negative. It has to be positive. So what happens when you multiply a negative times a negative? And a positive times a positive is still a positive. So I have no idea what this is, but this is going to be a yes. Because I know it's a positive number, and a positive number is going to be greater than 0. But if you calculated it, you got a lot of decimals, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yes? What was it?
4.375.
Yeah, so something like that, right? All right, so now 0, 0 plus 1, 0 minus 1, and a 0 plus 2. So this is a 1 times negative 1 times a positive 2. This is going to be a negative 2. Is a negative 2 greater than or equal to 0? Nope, it's not. And then the last one there, 2 plus 1, 2 minus 1, and 2 plus 2. Is this going to be greater than or equal to 0? Well, this is 3, this is 1, and this is 4, and that right there will give you 12. Is greater than or equal to 0?
Yes.
Yes. So this is going to work in two sections, which is this one and this one. So when I do the number line for that one, or the answer, so the answer is -2 to a -1 union a 1 to infinity. I have a number line that goes from -2 to a -1, brackets, shade in between, and then one that goes from a 1 with a bracket on to infinity. Now, not all of them have graphs. If it doesn't have a graph in the answer choice, you don't have to worry about this part, the graphing part. Questions? So this problem was for number 6. So we have a few more. That was example what? E? Okay, so let's look at F. F looks a tad different only because it's x to the 4th. Now, we have factored out problems with x to the 4th, but I don't know if you guys remember. X to the 4th minus 45x squared minus 196 is greater than 0. So for this problem, you also have to numbers that multiply to 196 and add up to a -45. I'm going to give you a few of them and in them the answer. 1 times 96, 2 times 98, and 4 times 49. Now, because it is a -196, one of them is positive, one of them is negative, who would have to be the negative here? The bigger number. And who's going to give you the -45?
The one in the bottom.
The one at the bottom. So then this becomes x squared plus 4 and a x squared minus 49. Now, why are we using x squares? Because this is a 4. So keep that in mind. But guess what? You could still, there's a difference of squares. Very good. So we have x squared plus 4 times x
plus 7 and
x minus 7 because of that difference of squares. And we can't do anything with the x squared plus 4, so that one stays. So then from here, what do we do?
Set them equal to 0.
Set them equal to 0. Set them equal to 0. Set them equal to 0. Now, what happens when we solve this one? I end up with what?
the positive or negative.
Plus or
An
minus.
unreal
Plus or
number.
The unreal number. Very good. The plus or minus 2i because it's imaginary. So do you think that's going to be part of your answer?
No.
No. So you don't even have to worry about it. We only worry about x equals -7 and a x equals a +7. That's it. Are we good? Yes? So then here, when I'm thinking of my number line, it goes from a -7 to a 7. Bracket or parentheses?
Parentheses.
Parentheses. So -infinity to a -7, parentheses. -7 to a +7, +7 to a positive infinity. So which number would you pick here?
-8.
-8. Which number would you pick here?
0.
0. And which number would you pick here?
8.
8, right? So we have to try each one of those, which is not going to be too pretty. Sometimes it will, but we plug it into, I would plug it into this one. The one where everything is factored out. So if I have negative 8 squared plus 4, negative 8 plus 7, and a negative 8 minus 7, is that greater than or equal to 0? So once again, you have your calculators if we need to use them. What's negative 8 squared plus 4? 68, right? And then negative 8 plus 7?
1, negative.
A negative 1. And the negative 8 minus 7? Negative 15. So just think about this right now. Is that going to be a positive or negative answer?
Positive.
It's going to be positive. Is positive going to be larger than?
0.
Yes. And just so you know, the answer is a 1020, and it is greater than, but I'm also trying to help you by using your signs. So that one works. If I use the 0, 0 squared plus 4, 0 plus 7, and a 0 minus 7, is that going to be greater than 0? Well, this is just a 4. This is a 7. This is a negative 7. And right away I heard a no because it's going to be a negative answer, right?
Yes.
So this is a no. Very good. And then let me go ahead and do the positive 8 over here. 8 squared plus 4. 8 plus 7. And an 8 minus 1. Minus 7. That is greater than 0. So this becomes a positive 68. A positive 15. And a positive 1. And that right there is going to be, again, a positive 1020. And the answer is yes. So it works in how many of these?
2.
And the negative 8 and the positive 8. So my answer would be negative infinity to a negative 7. Union 7 to infinity. Number line, negative 7 parentheses to negative 7. Positive 7 parentheses to a everything that way. So that should have a negative in front of it. All right. Are we okay? All right. This is going to be for number 7. Now, this is F. So looking at G, you have a different kind of problem. Same thing. But now it looks like it starts off by being a fraction. So what would you set equal to 0 here? Both your numerator and your denominator. And it's the same thing. Both your numerator and your denominator. So x here would be a what?
4.
4. And x here would be a
Negative.
-3. So when I think of a number line, this is going to be a -3, and this is going to be a 4. So even though it's not a problem that you factor, it's this type of problem, you still set each function equal to 0. Bracket or parentheses?
Parentheses.
Parentheses. So this is from a -3 to the negative infinity, -3 to 4, or a 4 to positive infinity. You pick numbers in between, and you try those out. So between negative infinity and -3, -4. Between -3 and 4, 0. Between 4 and infinity, 5. So it's going to look different because now you have a fraction. But -4 minus 4 over a -4 plus 3 And we're going to end up with fractions here, whole numbers, or decimals. What's negative 4 minus 4? Negative 8 over a negative 1. Is this greater than 0?
Yes.
Well, it's positive 8 because a negative divided by negative becomes positive. So this is a yes. Then we try the 0. 0 minus 4 over 0 plus 3. Negative 4 over 3. So that is a negative number. It's not greater than 0. So this is a no. And then we have 5 minus 4 and 5 plus 3 is greater than 0, which gives me a 1 over 8. Is 1/8 greater than 0? The answer is yes. So the two that work, the first one and the last one. So my answer would be negative infinity to a negative 3, union 4 to infinity, and the number line from a negative 3, and then from a 4 this way. And this, of course, is for number 8. Okay. H. Questions on it? No? Was H next? Yes? I feel like I skipped a letter, maybe. I don't know. So let's say I had x plus 4, x minus 1, and an x plus 2 squared, less than or equal to 0. So how many things would I have to set equal to 0 here? 3.
4.
Well, 4, but what happened in the problem when we had a square? Did it really make a difference? No. So we could just stick to the 3, and that'll be fine. So I have x plus 4 equals to 0, x minus 1 equals to 0, and an x plus 2 equals to 0. So x equals a negative 4, x equals a positive 1, and x equals a negative 2. We see the number line. Smallest number is
Negative 4.
negative 4. Then we have a,
Negative 2.
and then we have a
1.
1. So this could be bracket or parentheses.
Bracket.
Negative infinity to a negative 4 with a bracket. Negative 4 to a negative 2 with a bracket. Negative 2 to a 1 with a bracket, and a 1 to infinity. The 1 with the bracket, the infinity with the parentheses. And then you would check each one. Do I really need to finish the problem? So just to plug it in, make sure you plug it in both numerator and denominators, right? So we're good. And because we're talking about 0, just look at it. If it's here, you're looking for numbers that are negative in order for it to work, right? Because you need numbers that are less than 0. So we're good? Yeah?
That's number 9.
This is number 9. Now, how is the next one a little bit different? Let's look at I. 2x over x plus 4 is less than x. So what is wrong with this problem?
It's not 0.
It's not 0, so what do I have to do? Subtract x, right? So then this becomes 2x over x plus 4 minus x is less than 0. So the thing here, the problem here is I need to be able to add those. And in order for me to be able to add them, I need to have the same what? Denominator. So this is going to be for problem number 10. It is the last one. So this right now is over 1. But in order for me to be able to do something, I have to get the same denominator, which looks like this. So once I do that, this here stays 2x over x plus 4 But this here becomes x squared plus 4x over x plus 4 is greater than 0. Now, please keep in mind this subtraction will affect those two right now. So if I were to be able to combine the top, this would become a negative x squared. And what is 2x minus 4x? 2x minus 4x. It's a negative 2x over x plus 4 less than or equal to that. Are we good?
We can factor out that.
But we could factor out an x. What kind of x would you factor out actually?
Negative.
A negative x. So we factor out a negative x from the top and I end up with an x plus 2. And then the x plus 4 on the bottom. Now that it's combined, now that everything's on the left side, everything's factored out, now I could set each thing equal to 0. And how many things do you have?
3.
3. We have the negative x equals to 0, the x plus 2 equals to 0, and the x plus 4 equals to 0. So we divide by negative 1, but this is still going to be 0. This becomes a negative 2, and this becomes a negative 4. So when I do my number line, negative 4, negative 2, and a 0. And since the problem is all the way in the top, was this bracket or parentheses?
Parentheses.
Parentheses. So negative infinity to a negative 4, negative 4 to a negative 2, negative 2 to 0, and 0 to infinity. Which numbers would you pick?
Negative 5.
Negative 5, negative 3, negative 1, and a positive 1. And then I would come in, plug them in here, and then go for a yay or an A, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Negative, negative 5, and then negative 5 plus 2. Negative 5 plus 2 over negative 5 plus 4 should be less than or equal to 0. This becomes a what? Positive 5 times a
7.
negative 3 over a negative 1. And we're looking to see if it is less than or equal to 0. Well, this becomes a negative 15 over a negative 1. So that's going to become what? Positive 15. Is positive 15 going to be less than 0? No. So that can't be it. Negative, negative 3, negative 3 plus 2, negative 3 plus 4, less than 0. Negative, negative 3
Positive 3.
times a negative 1 over a positive 1. Negative 3 over 1 is what? Negative 3. Is negative 3 less than 0? Yes. So that one works. Negative, negative 1. So once again, the lesson is not difficult. It just takes a lot of time for you to check each of your problems. So that becomes a positive 1. That's a positive 1. And that is a positive 3. So this becomes a positive 1/3. Is a positive 1/3 going to be less than 0? No. And I have to try the last one, if this thing allows me. Negative, positive 1, 1 plus 2 over 1 plus 4, less than 0. So negative 1, 3 over 5. Negative 3 over 5, is that less than 0?
Yes.
Yes. So which two worked? The second and the last one. And then there's your answer. So this is for which problem? Wonderful problem number 10. And you are done.